welcome everybody to the After Dark Show. I'm Don Rogers. Before we get going on today's solo episode, I want to just do a quick rehash of Friday's episode. If you guys missed it, you should absolutely check it out. I was fortunate enough to have the inventor of a very interesting device called the harmonic egg on the show, and Gail Lynn is an amazing, and the sharing of experience and intelligence, as always, was just off the charts. And I cannot say enough good things about her because she is one of those ones that has found something, a modality, and I need to calm myself. My nervous system is always on high, and that's something we've talked about. I need to settle the fuck down because that's why I end up going through these so very quickly. So this episode is another mainstream metaphysical literature episode, the missing pieces, so to speak. So with that being said, let's set the stage of like the mindset that you kind of need to be in to absorb simply personal fulfillment. The message is the same. Stuck. If your outer world has not yet matched the quiet vision that you carry of your potential reality, then I really think this episode is for you. We will move slowly, deliberately through each principle. I like I said at the top, and I caught myself doing it already, I don't want to rush. There's no surface treatment, only the deep current that runs beneath successful lives. So like I said, we're going to explain these principles one at a time. So let's begin with desire, because every meaningful manifestation begins with a true burning desire. But not just a vague wish or a polite preference. You know, like a lot of us are like, I wish my life would change or it'd be better if this. No, these are a definite emotionally charged purpose that pulls a person forward with the force of a magnet, basically. Napoleon Hill made this the first and principle. He observed that the men and women who rose from obscurity to achieve to great achievement did not merely just hope for it. They burned. Like their desire was so intense that they organized their days, their conversations, what they read, and even how they slept in order to help manifest these things into reality. It became the silent reference point against which every one of their choices is measured. And it's that type of focused intention on the creation of reality that we're going to get into the explanation of. So one of the things that Hill talked about is, if you consider a man named Edward C. Barnes, he wanted to work with Thomas Edison. But here is the thing, you know, that was and Edison back in the day was a big thing, right? And he had no money, no connections, no formal introductions. What he possessed was an obsession so clear and intense that every decision of his daily life was measured against it. And I know this sounds like a lot of psychological work in our busy world, and that's exactly why we live in a busy world, is to keep us distracted from being able to focus these intentions. He arrived at Edison's laboratory determined not to leave until the partnership became real. He even took a menial job. He endured indifference while he waited for years, yet his desire never cooled into a casual hope. He kept that focus, the burning desire that this is what my life is about, image in his mind, right? So it never, you can't let it wane. If you have a true desire, you have to make that your guided intentional focus in this reality in order to ascertain it. And that being said, years later, the partnership did become real. Like he actually ended up working with Edison after quite some time, because from day one he said, "I'm going to work with Thomas Edison." And I didn't look too far into it, but he could have been pushing a broom. Who knows, right? But he took a base level job and worked his way in to the reality that he so desperately desired. And that's where desire comes in. Desire isn't just a nagging want, it's a driving force. And we've been taught to ignore our desires and accept reality as it is, and it's not. It really is not. um exactly this. Barnes didn't just wish to be associated with Edison, he decided that he would be, and he arranged his existence around that decision. um Hill saw this story he saw in this story the essential difference between wishing and desiring, because a wish is passive. It's make a wish. It's something you wish upon, and hopefully it comes true, and that's you say it and you let it go. But that's not how creation in this reality can actually work, where a desire, when it reaches the intensity of obsession, becomes an active force that rearranges circumstances. And if you cross reference this, Florence Scovel Shinn taught us the same truth, but in a different language. She said that desire is God in man seeking expression, right? Which is a very deep philosophical thing to wrap your head around. But when pure desire and is the when a desire is pure and definitive, it is always moving forward toward its fulfillment in the invisible realm, right? That work of the individual is to claim it with the spoken word and refuse to dilute it with doubt, right? You have to believe what you're saying, what you're thinking, what you're believing, because you're the one creating it. And if you're not creating it, someone else is, because you're accepting their version of you, of it, of that, of the situation, when it really is ours to shape, right? um Shin warned that desire that clouded Shin warned that desire clouded by fear or diluted by competing wants to lose its magnetic force. It's like putting paper or cardboard between a magnet, right? When you start to put layers of interference between the two poles, it slows the reaction, right? I know that's a simplification, but it's basically what she's explaining. Um, the clearer and more single-minded desire, the more rapidly the invisible begins to take form, where weak desire scatters the energy. It produces half-hearted efforts and incomplete results. Um, Strong desire, like I was explaining, becomes magnetic. It organizes the faculties of the mind. It attracts the necessary knowledge and draws the right people and circumstances into the alignment. Um, where Hill advised the right, also along the same line, Hill advised the writing of a clear statement of desire, because a lot of this is about seeing these things in physicality in your mind and in your physical realm, and hearing them even in your own speech. And we're going to get into that. So what is wanted? So what you're supposed to write down is this clear desire. What is wanted? By when? And the deep personal reason that gives the desire its emotional power, right? And that is a key fundamental. That personal reason is critical. Without it, desire remains kind of an abstract. With it, the desire is changed or charged with feeling, and feeling is the language of that the subconscious understands, and our subconscious is key to our creation and manifestation, right? um so, and this along the same lines, I'm going to bounce back and forth between Shin and Hill here. And Shin would add that the statement a must be spoken as a present fact, right? And this goes even back to the Buddhist philosophy of the I am, right? So um, when you're writing these principles or these concepts in your head, or even saying them aloud or writing them down, you write them as I am now, and then whatever you want, like I am now abundant. And I'm going to get into this doesn't happen in real time, and this does take, it takes a while to build a house, right? I will get into this, but you have to start wholeheartedly, emotionally, and physically believing in the things that you are projecting out into reality, right? And the subconscious responds to the mind, the language of now, right? It understands that this is it's a direct order, it's a direction of reality. When does want and I don't know the answer to that, Lee. When does want end? I think, and I'm actually going to get into this. Sorry, I'm just going to put a pin in this and answer Lee here really quick. When does want end? I am going to cover something along this line in next week's episode, basically that involves biomolecular construct of reality and the principles of manifestation. Basically, what you and I were talking about on the phone. There's a deeper explanation of that is not related to this directly, but I am going to cover that. Um, so this is what I was going to explain is the outer world is slow to catch up. It's almost like time dilation. Like we can visualize and see things clearly in our minds when we truly desire them, right? We know what we deserve. We know what we want. We know when we want it, but take it's it does take its time to manifest into reality. And that's because the thought process and the creation process are in two very, very different scopes of reality, but they are directly related, right? So desire, uh, desire then is the spark and the compass. Without it, the other principles remain theoretical, right? With it, they become living forces. So that takes us to the next section of this, which is faith. And faith is the inner knowing and emotional acceptance that what has been desired is already on its way into form, which is what I was explaining. Like the thought and the creation do span much, much different times. And that is just an unfortunate side effect of living in a linear time based participatory reality, right? Things do take time to balance and manifest, and you have to keep focused. Otherwise, they kind of trail off like a lost puppy chasing a squirrel. Just give me 1 second. Hill called faith the eternal elixir that gives life to thought. So without faith, desire remains a sterile idea. With faith, thought becomes a living seed. Faith is not blind optimism. It's the cultivated conviction that arises from repeated affirmations and from the deliberate refusal to entertain contradictory pictures. Like, do not doubt what you're attempting to create. Do not let that little ego voice, that little bitch in your head, tell you you don't deserve it or it's not coming, because it just is a process. And sometimes it's a very lengthy process. Like, I look at now that I live in a single wide trailer and blah, blah, blah. But I also look at the fact that 5 years ago, we were on the verge of nothing and had almost lost everything and knew we deserved better. And even through the messy mindset that my wife and I were in at the time, we managed to create a much, much better life without even knowing the realistic laws of reality and the creation and manifestation principles that I'm now explaining to you, right? I don't want to speak for her. but fell into this ass backwards and had to stumble through the process one at a time through gnosis and interviews and conversations and deep dives and Googling and just ridiculous, and all of the wonderful people that Kyla has introduced me to and the videos and things that she has shared, because she knows this vessel and this conscious existence understand the keys to reality and are on a mission to further explain them on a level that everybody can understand them. So with that being said, it is the cultivated conviction that arises from repeated affirmation, from the deliberate refusal to entertain contradictory pictures, like I was explaining. Hill taught that faith can be developed by autosuggestion. Now, this is a really cool thing. So by feeding the mind again and again the image and the feeling of the desired state until the subconscious accepts it as true. And where this principle gets really, really neat is back in my younger days, I used to sketch and draw a fair amount. And one of the things that one of my art teachers, I think it was in grade 7 or 8, taught us is that your mind, he was a very smart man, an alcoholic, smart man. That's familiar. I was an alcoholic and apparently a very smart man too. But he taught us that you cannot create an image just from your imagination. Everything, like even when you draw a random face, you're not drawing a random face. You're drawing somebody's nose and somebody's eyes and somebody's ears. And, you know, if it's a dude, maybe it's my beard and my son's hat or whatever. But you're drawing bits and pieces from your memory. You cannot just create an image. So what that ties into this principle as is that everything we can visualize exists in some facet of reality, right? The bits and pieces of creation are there. It's our jobs to pull them together and make them one thing. And that's the fundamental explanation of what we're talking about here, is that if I can visualize something in my mind, then at some point in the creation of this reality, it exists, because we cannot create an image that does not actually exist. Now, be it in some further time and after a longer process, I understand that. But these things, these pieces, these images do actually exist in some reality, right? And that's what you're trying to draw your biological vessel and your energetic expulsion towards, right? We're trying to pull ourselves towards the picture we're trying to create, right? So he observed that the successful individuals he studied did not wait for external evidence before they believed it. They generated the belief first, and then the evidence followed. So this is a reversal of ordinary thinking, right? So ordinary thinking waits for proof. And this is something we have drilled into us. It's programming, right? Ordinary thinking waits for proof and then believes it, right? You know, it's actually one of the old adages, and quite possibly a spell that we're made to believe. You know, seeing is believing. Is it? Why? Because if I can visualize it, I can believe it too. I don't have to see it. I just have to know through my energetic impulses that this thing actually exists, and it exists. It's that belief that helps us create reality, right? And even right now, as I'm saying these words, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to admit this on the air, that, you know, there's a knot in my stomach that, you know, oh, no, that is self-doubt and programming that has been instilled in us on a neurological, biological level in order to block us and keep us from understanding these deeper principles of creation. Because if we understand these principles of creation and start to truly manifest our own realities, the sociological construct of those that are they that think that they are in charge and think that there is no consequence for their version of reality that they have enforced upon us, it becomes very, very bad for them because we no longer rely on them because we're independent, sovereign beings when we learn to create our own reality. Um, so, that being said, faith believes, and then, yeah. So, Florence Scovel Shinn spoke of faith as the substance of the things hoped for. She insisted that one must act as though the thing were already accomplished. And that goes back to, yes, don't believe your lying eyes. Exactly, Lee. Um, she insisted that one must act as though it already exists, already accomplished. When fear or doubt arises, and it will, the practice is not to fight the doubt, but replace it with a higher statement, right? You have to reprogram that. This is our algorithm. This is our machine. This is our reality. We're allowed to do the things that we are here to do and create the realities that we desire. But we've been so mentally mind fucked that we don't believe this anymore on a base level. And that's why this feels like such a complex, hard concept, but it really is not, right? When doubt or fear arise, and it will, you have to practice that higher statement. And the example she gives is, I have perfect faith that the right thing is unfolding now. A very, very simple sentence, right? Doubt is natural. It's the residue of past experiences and collective conditioning. It's that underlying data that writes the autopilot program that we tend to live on most of the time in the day-to-day life that we experience, because they have made it so that we are so busy that we have no choice but to run on autopilot, because they want it their way and they know we can make it our way, right? I know this sounds redundant, but it really is true. And it is fundamental that people understand this, because the ones in control of the sociological construct, are the ones that are making our lives so difficult. My buddy Steven always says, if we stand, flip the tables, there's that meme of, the working class underneath the board of the controllers. And if we all stand up, it's exactly that. But I'm getting on a tangent and I'm getting excited. So I'm going to calm back down and go back to my place here. So yes, learn that mantra, right? And again, this is not just a simple affirmation. This is a single piece of a much bigger program that we need to change the algorithm in our existence. But I have perfect faith that the right thing is unfolding now, right? You say that as a command to your own reality, because we deserve the reality that we are here for. The work is to notice it without giving it the final word. Ask yourself quietly, in what areas of my life am I still operating from the memory of limitation rather than the expectancy of good, right? Because we're so convinced that everything is always going to be the same, and it's always going to be the same experience and nothing changes. That's the loop. That's the program. That's the cycle that they want us to be stuck in order to not be able to manifest or create our own reality, right? So, where can I begin? And after that, once you've gotten that question answered, the next thing you need to ask yourself is, where can I begin to speak and feel as though the desired state is already present? Because I know you can't do it in all of your life. I know it's hard, and I've mentioned this a dozen times before on the show. Your nervous system knows you're lying. You can't say I'm abundant while you're on food stamps, because your body, your mind, your consciousness, everything that connects and creates reality knows you're lying, right? It's simple steps of gratitude and forward momentum, right? Believe in the small things to create the bigger miracles, and the flow will eventually open, right? So faith is not a feeling that arrives fully formed either, right? It's built day by day through the steady impressing of the mind with the reality one chooses to create. Each time a person chooses the higher statement over the lower one, the faith grows, right? You're building that confidence in your own words. And if we can't believe what we're saying to ourselves, how the hell can we believe anything else in this reality? We're the ones that we have to believe first and foremost. If we can't believe the thoughts and ideas in our own minds, they have absolutely won. You are a fucking automaton at that point, because you're just doing what you're told instead of looking around at how you can change it and energetically propel yourself into the reality that you desire, right? So over time, the lower statements lose their grip and the mind begins to rest, and the nervous system as well begins to rest more naturally in its expectancy, right? It becomes okay to just let things flow instead of being in constant fight, flight, fawn, or fear, right? We can just exist through reality and create it as we go and accept the manifestation as it comes, as long as we are faithful in our desire of what we're trying to create, right? So I want to get back into autosuggestion here. Autosuggestion is the deliberate process of feeding the subconscious mind thoughts and feelings one wishes to accept as the truth, right? So Hill regarded it as the intermediate step between conscious desire and subconscious belief, right? The subconscious mind accepts and executes. Autosuggestion is that bridge, right? So this is where I'm saying it can't just be base level affirmation. By repeatedly affirming a clear statement of desire with that emotion and reason, preferably aloud and preferably while the mind is quiet, the individual impresses upon the deeper mind until it begins to work automatically towards the realization of that statement, right? And Hill emphasized that your words alone are not enough. The emotion must accompany them. A dry mechanical repetition does very little, right? The same words spoken with feeling begin to rearrange the inner landscape, right? And this is where we go back to Florence Scovel as well. She taught the same principle through the power of the spoken word. She said that man is a speaking spirit, and that his word is the law in his own life, right? Let that sink in. Your word is your law in your own life, right? This crap with words or spells, once you understand the emotional intention and the deliberate creation of the words that you're speaking, that words of spell bullshit falls to the side and you just start creating reality, because you understand the energetic projection that you are placing upon your potential creation. And that is key to this entire process, right? And again, we do a lot of things on autopilot. Careless speech scatters the force, and that goes back to understanding the intention. Deliberate affirmation, deliberate affirmed speech concentrates that energy. This goes back to last week's show again about intention versus words and spells, like I was just saying, right? I am now free from debt, spoken with feeling and repeated until the emotional resistance dissolves, begins to rearrange circumstances. The subconscious does not argue with the conscious mind. It simply accepts the dominant impression and works to make it real as soon as possible. Consistency matters more than intensity at the beginning. The subconscious is not impressed by a single passionate outburst. It's impressed by a steady drip of the same idea. You have to draw the picture slowly for the subconscious mind, accompanied by the corresponding emotion of the intended picture or creation, right? Treat the practice as a daily mental nutrition. Morning and evening are natural times, right? You're most creative subconsciously when you're in that that state just as we go to sleep and become aware where we're not quite immersed in this third density of reality and able to properly project, I guess is the words I'm looking for. When your conscious mind is less cluttered and the subconscious is more receptive, and autosuggestion is not self deception. It is an intelligent use of a natural faculty. So when you're telling yourself these things over and over again, you're not lying to yourself. You're implanting the idea of the reality that you see that you deserve, right? You're using a natural neurological function of this biological vessel to use your antenna to project the reality that you desire. Um, every person is already using this, usually unconsciously, and often and most often in the direction of limitation by telling ourselves those negative stories that we're programmed to tell ourselves, right? We we follow instruction because we've been so browbeaten into exhaustion that we just follow the stream because it's easier to often be cattle than it is to be creative. And we have to shake out of this, right? And this innovation is is to use it deliberately, right? In the direction of the life one truly desires, right? And the next section I want to get into is specialized knowledge, because this is a big one. This is what I've spent the last 2 years doing, talking to people, reading, watching videos, Googling, looking stuff up, talking to more people, right? Because desire and faith alone are not enough. Manifestation accelerates when it is joined by specialized knowledge, the practical information and skill required to move the desire in form, right? Hill distinguished between general knowledge and specialized knowledge. Generalized knowledge is scattered and rarely organizes itself into power, where specialized knowledge is focused, applied, and continually updated, right? The successful individual to does not need to does not need to possess all knowledge personally. He needs to know where to find it and how to organize it around a definitive purpose, right? You don't need to know everything. You don't need to know how quantum physics works. You just need to understand the parts of the creative process that you need in order to properly focus your energetic output. Uh, this is why Hill urged the formation of alliances with people who possess complementary knowledge, right? I've created an entire friend group of people that I didn't know 3 years ago, and it has changed my life. And that's one of the things I've said since I got this gnosis a couple of years ago, is that I don't think it's any one thing. And I think one of the keys to understanding any of it is comparing notes and seeing where everybody's information overlaps, because where all of the things are the same is the highest probability of how this reality actually works, right? So it's also why continuous learning from books and mentors and direct experience is essential. Knowledge that is not applied remains inert, right? So if you know something but you're not putting it into practice in your own life, then it's basically like, and I'm not taking a shot at math, but it's basically like freaking algebra, right? I learned algebra. How often have I used it? Zero, right? Um, and that was me saying zero. I didn't just throw up the six thing. Yeah. Anyway, but no, like literally, if you just have knowledge in your head and you're not using it, it's fundamentally useless. You've just read it, right? Um, Knowledge that is applied becomes power. Hill studied men who had little formal schooling yet rose to extraordinary heights because they knew how to organize the knowledge of others around as a single aim, right? You know how to collect the information and create the focused reality that you want. You know how to use what you've learned from everybody and everything that you intake around you. And it's said on 1,000 different podcasts, 1,000 different ways. Take what resonates and leave what doesn't. That's exactly how this works. You take these pieces of the working information that help us understand this process and build your own structure of your manifestation process so you can start to create. So Andrew Carnegie was one such example. He had no pretense of knowing every technical detail of the steel business. He surrounded himself with those who did, though, and he kept the definitive purpose of creating the largest steel company in the world always before him. Right? He's like, I want to make the steel company, and he's like, that's what I'm going to do. So basically, long story short, he surrounded himself with people who had the knowledge, and he took a little bit from each person and created a skill set within himself that made him the authority on the creation of that particular thing. And that's what you need to do in your own reality, is become an authority on the thing that you are trying to create. The presence that you are trying to achieve needs to come from a place of understanding as well, right? Specialized knowledge in Hill's view is never a finished process. It is a current It is a living current that must be kept moving through the application and refinement, right? Florence Shin approached the same idea from the side of intuition and divine guidance. She taught that when a person is in harmony with the infinite, the necessary knowledge and the right contacts appear at the precise moment they are needed. And again, this is another thing that has happened to me again and again and again, much like my guest on Friday, Gail Lynn. She is the right person at the right time for my next experience. And we absolutely clicked, and this is going to be amazing. And it's because I required this in my reality. I put it out. I didn't know what it looked like, and it appeared. Right. So this process is, in my experience of this reality, proven. Right. I've seen this in my own life. Right. I literally just did this. I randomly messaged Gail Lynn after learning about her product, not expecting even so much as a response. And now she's helping me set up a session and hopefully able to share this information with all of you. Like this is just my real time example. Like this started a few months ago, happened on Friday, and is accelerated from then till Sunday to the point where I might have an appointment within the next couple of weeks, and I can share it with all of you. So the outer search for information is therefore balanced by the inner listening. One studies, one prepares, and one remains open to the unexpected ideas or opportunities that arrive as if by appointment, right? This goes back to just have the idea and forget about how it gets there, right? Because we just need to project this out into the universe and not worry about the mechanics of how it comes into creation, because that's the universe's job. That's the molecular structure of our reality's job, right? We're just the one projecting, receiving, and observing the reality that we're programming out into this universal space. It's not our job to figure out how it happens. It's just our job to project the desire and wait for it to arrive while working towards it, right? You can't just wish it, want it, and blah, blah, right? It doesn't work like that either. I went over that earlier. So what you need to do is seek knowledge related to your purpose, your definite purpose, right? Apply what you learned and remain humble enough to revise your understanding as new light appears. And again, I go back to Chris Matthew, and I thank him every time I say this, because Chris said something to me one day, and shifted my perspective on how I participate in reality is I don't know anything, and I'm paraphrasing. I don't have a belief system. I have a current understanding. And these principles that I'm explaining to you and I'm attempting to share so you can help create your reality are literally just my current understanding. And my my current understanding is one that we do co-create this existence, right? So knowledge is not a static possession. It is a living current that must be kept moving. So from there, this is one that we always got told to get away from as kids. You have such a wild imagination. He has an overactive imagination. You know, save your imagination for special, right? Can you guess what the next one is? It's imagination. Imagination is the workshop of the mind. Hill divided it into two forms: synthetic imagination and creative imagination, right? Synthetic imagination rearranges existing ideas, concepts, and experiences into new combinations. It is the faculty used by the inventor who improves an existing machine, or by the writer who weaves known human motives into a fresh story, right? You're just reworking the ideas of the universe, where creative imagination goes further. It connects the individual to what Hill called the infinite intelligence, the reservoir of original ideas, the collective conscious, I guess what we would call it now, and the insights that have never been expressed in that form. Many great breakthroughs in science, art, and industry have come through the higher faculty. And again, I'm sorry, Gail Lynn just had an idea and invented the harmonic egg. Uh, Henry Ford's vision of the affordable automobile and the assembly line was not merely a rearrangement of existing parts. It was seeing it was a new seeing that others had missed, right? He had a vision. And I'm not going to get too far into Henry Ford because he invented the 40-hour work week, which is basically the enslavement system of the 9 to 5er. And I have some personal qualms about that, but I will leave that out of this episode. It matches our synthetic level as we live life. Yes, exactly. And we can create the more new base, like we can create the non-synthetic versions of our reality, much like what you're doing, Lee. You know, where you live almost off grid. You're damn near there as it is. You grow your own food. You've created your own reality, right? And you you all but have it perfectly organized. And that's because over the last 30 years, you've created an existence that works for you and allows you to live almost completely outside the system. And it really is amazing that, this process basically explains what you've done, Lee. Um, so let's go back to Edison. Edison's long search for a practical filament was guided by flashes of insight that arrived after long periods of concentrated thought. And that goes back to that silencing of the mind, because we are disconnected from our conscious thought so deeply by our modern existence that it is very, very hard to connect to that thought until you start basically allowing your mind to quiet. Hill insisted that the creative imagination is not the exclusive property of geniuses. It is available to anyone who keeps the mind charged with a definitive purpose and free from clutter of fear and doubt and outside distractions. We'll just throw that in there. Florence Scovel spoke of imagination as the scissors of the mind that cut the pattern for the future, which I think is a beautiful, beautiful quote. Um, she she also warned us against the careless use of imagination in the direction of fear or limitation, because again, just as much as you can create your own reality, you can kind of fuck it up too if you're constantly in that self-doubt, ego-driven, I'm not good enough, poverty programmed mindset. It's what you're gonna create, right? I've said this before in a lighter aspect of, if you're like, my life sucks, my life sucks, my life sucks, you're just, the universe is like, okay, your life sucks, here's more suck, right? You and cancel and nullify. My life personally has been very, very awesome lately, and it's because of what I'm creating. Um, sorry, I was reading Lee's comment. So it also creates Lee's limitation. Every image held with feeling tends to externalize. Therefore, the wise person deliberately constructs mental pictures of the desired state and dwells in them until they feel real. So instead of being in that my life sucks mindset, be in the my life is awesome mindset, right? And start creating the vision of the mindset and the experience that you're trying to create, right? And you need to dedicate time each day for vivid mental rehearsal. See, and like actually visualize and see the fulfilled desire in your mind. I know this sounds like, oh, you're just playing imaginary friends. No, you're not. This is why we're told not to use our imaginations, because it's a very powerful creative tool that actually works in this reality, right? And yes, Lee, it doesn't even exist with these damn phones. I know. And I understand the irony of talking about distraction on the internet, on a device, using a cell phone to broadcast. Totally get it. Not trying to be hypocritical, just the only way I can get the information out. So before anybody writes me an email about me being a hypocrite, I get it. So feel the emotions that would accompany the dedicated the fulfilled desire, right? Actually try to imagine what it would feel like. Are you on a farm? Are you smelling the fresh air, the fresh cut hay, a little bit of horse manure in the background? Oh, there's a chicken. And you just start to really allow the imagination to build the reality that you want, and see that as your projected desire, right? Because you have to draw the picture before you can create the building, right? You need a blueprint, and that's where the imagination comes into play. Imagination is not daydreaming, it's the preparatory act of creation. um, Organized planning. Desire without a plan basically just remains a wish, right? Faith without organized effort just remains untested. Hill insisted that every definitive purpose must be translated into a practical plan of action, written out and pursued with flexibility. The plan need not be perfect at the outset. In fact, Hill observed most of the successful plans are revised many, many times. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. Those are just learning experiences on how to create better. Do not beat yourself up. Do not let that ego program tell you did it wrong. You just learned something. That scolding that you're giving yourself is an imaginary program in your brain installed by somebody else to drive your ego into not creating. That's the long and the short of it, okay? The essential thing is to begin with the best plan one can devise, then remain alert for necessary adjustments, okay? And like I was just saying, setbacks are not final. Just give me one more second here. They are feedback. Central to organized planning is the mastermind principle, right? This is the next step. The harmonious alliance of two or more minds working towards a common purpose. Hill discovered that when minds are coordinated in a spirit of harmony, they create a third invisible force greater than the sum of the individual minds, right? I know that sounds very deep and mathematic, but ideas appear that none of the members would have generated alone. right? Because your courage and your idea is multiplied. The knowledge is shared. He saw this principle at work in the lives of nearly every outstanding achiever he studied. The plan itself might change, but the presence of aligned minds kept the purpose alive and the energy high. Right? When you're trying to create and manifest big things, sometimes you basically need an energetic backup to help drive the creation into our reality, right? Florence Shin also emphasized the importance of following the lead or the intuitive prompting that often arrives once a definitive decision has been made. Plans are valuable, yet must remain open to higher intelligence that sees the entire pattern. Okay. Non-resistance, refusing to force a particular channel, allows the right opportunities to appear. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier. You just need the desire and the emotional drive behind the idea. Don't worry about how many pieces it's built out of, because the universe handles that part. Ours is just to drive towards the concept that we're trying to create, right? That's our work. That's our biological mission. That is our human experience, right? This is what we're here to be doing, but we've been so deeply brainwashed that we forgot how to do it. Begin with clear steps. Write them down. Seek the counsel of those whose judgment and character you respect, right? Talk to the friends that you truly see as intellectual equals, right? Or even superiors that you need to bounce ideas off of that can help you understand the fundamentals of what you're trying to create on a deeper level. Remain willing to alter the course when evidence or intuition indicates a better way. Organized planning turns vision into momentum. And the next thing is decision. Okay. Successful people decide promptly and change their minds slowly. The unsuccessful decide slowly and change their mind frequently. Hill found this principle repeated across the lives he studied. Indecision dilutes the energy. It keeps the mind in a state of suppression where no clear command is given to the subconscious. This is exactly what I was talking about, okay? You have to command the subconscious clearly. Prompt decision, even if revised later, creates a current force, right? Procrastination is often fear wearing a respectable mask. You'll tell yourself a million different reasons why you're not doing it, but it's just procrastination and fear, right? The fear of making the wrong choice keeps a person from making any choice at all. And this is something that my lovely wife, she has perfection paralysis and fear of failure. And it took her a very long time. She still has a box of what she calls unfinished objects. She's a fiber artist. She creates. And it was that fear of being judged that she did it wrong at the end of the project, that why she has a box of them. So there's all this potential energy that she's created sitting in a box, disconnected from its completed state because of fear. And it's completely unnecessary, because the only one that can judge your process and progress from a place that truly matters is yourself, because you're the driving force behind your own reality, right? So, yet every delayed decision is itself a decision, the decision to remain where one is, right? You're choosing not to change. You're choosing not to move forward. You're choosing not to progress further into what you were trying to create because you're afraid. Hill noted that the men who rose to leadership were rarely those who waited for the perfect information. They gathered what knowledge they could, decided, and then and then adjusted as new information appeared. You have to work on the fly when you're creating, right? It's much like making a good chili or stew. You're going to change the spices because it's not quite right and it doesn't quite fit the olfactory vision of what you thought it should taste like. The act of deciding itself generated further clarity. I apologize. Shinn taught that once a word is spoken with authority, the invisible begins to move. Hesitation after the word has been spoken invites delay, because if you don't say it with confidence, you're not projecting it. It's like saying it like this versus saying it with a megaphone. You have to say it with a megaphone if you want this great big universe to hear you, because if you're just whispering, it's going to take a very long time for anybody to get the message. And that's the long and the short of it. Therefore, speak the decision as a present fact, and then move forward without continually reopening the question. If doubt about the direction arises, return to the original desire and the deep personal reason behind it, and clarify the purpose again to yourself to re-navigate or readjust your navigation through the process, because you started this with a true desire. You started this with a true goal in mind, and you knew where you wanted to go. And just because you've been bumped doesn't mean the road changed. It just means you have to adjust your steering. Okay, that's the simplification of this principle, right? If doubt about the direction arises, return to the original desire and the deep personal clarify the purpose. I just said that. See, I made a mistake and I'm going to keep going. Then decide the next concrete step and take it. Grab the wheel, make sure you're not in the ditch, make sure you're not off the road, and drive forward again to what you're trying to get to. Momentum is built by successive decisions, not perfect foresight. You have to keep making these choices as you navigate through the process. So this brings us to what's next, and that is persistence. Like I was just saying about driving down the road, persistence is the sustained effort necessary to induce faith and carry a plan through to completion despite temporary defeat. A lot of us get these moments where we just kind of give up on everything that we're trying to do, right? Hill illustrated this principle with the life of Thomas Edison, who conducted thousands of experiments before completing the incandescent lamp, right? He didn't just go, light bulb littering, right? Sorry for the pun, but it wasn't just a light bulb moment. It was many, many reworkings, and each failure was simply information. The next vision remained fixed, and the methods were simply adjusted based on the new information. It wasn't a mistake. You don't need to beat yourself over these, right? It's just something they've taught us to do. Edison himself had not failed. He had simply found 10,000 ways that it did not work. This attitude is the essence of persistence. Most people quit after the first or second setback and just throw their hands up and give it up. And it really, you need to drive forward. The persistent few continue until the cumulative force of their own effort breaks through the resistance of the circumstance, right? You have to punch through that wall of resistance because you're trying to drive something new and create something in your own reality that didn't exist before, right? And persistence is not stubborn rigidity. It is flexible determination, the willingness to change tactics while refusing to abandon the ultimate aim is the most logical way to progress through this theory, right? Hill observed that many people abandon their purpose just before the breakthrough arrives. It's like giving up on the 5-yard line, right? Those who hold on through that stretch are the ones who succeed. Shinn spoke of persistence in a language of faith and non-resistance. She taught that When one has spoken the word of truth, one must stand still and see the salvation, right? You can call the salvation of the Lord. You can call the Creator whatever you want. Outward appearances may contradict the word for a while, but the work is to hold the vision and to refuse to accept the appearance that it is final. Sorry. The work is to hold the vision and refuse to accept the appearance as final, right? So you're not done until you've created what you want. Build persistence the way one builds any faculty, by daily practice in small things. Keep the agreements you make with yourself. Complete the tasks you begin. Each small victory strengthens that mental muscle of will. Over time, that muscle becomes capable of carrying larger aims through greater resistance. So you can actually start to become stronger in your manifestation ability, right? Here's a very important section, and it's one that I mentioned off the top. The mastermind, sorry, the power of the mastermind. The mastermind is a coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose. Hill regarded this principle as one of the most important discoveries of his research. When minds are blended in genuine harmony, they create a collective intelligence greater than any single member processes. Ideas flow more freely. Courage is reinforced. The emotional atmosphere becomes charged with expectancy rather than doubt, right? This alliance doesn't need to be large. Two people who trust each other and share a clear purpose can generate the mastermind effect. The essential ingredients are harmony and a definitive aim. Discord or hidden agendas will always destroy this connection. Hill saw this principle operating in the lives of industrial leaders, inventors, and even statesmen. The invisible force that arises from harmonious alliance is real and has measurable results. It multiplies energy and accelerates the arrival of solution that none of the individuals would have reached alone. As I mentioned earlier, Shinn approached the relationship from the standpoint of divine order. She taught that the right people appear when the right vibrational agreement, when one is in the right vibrational agreement with one's desire. One does not need to force associations. One clarifies the inner state and remains open to the human instruments that the infinite uses, and chooses collaborators carefully, right? Or sorry, choose your collaborators carefully. Look for character, complementary knowledge, and shared willingness to give as well as receive. Meet regularly if possible. Or, now in the age of cell phones, talk, text, whatever. Keep the conversation centered on the purpose. The invisible force that arises from such meetings is real and measurable in results. And here comes the PG-13 section. The mystery of sex transmutation. Hill observed that the majority of men who achieved outstanding success possessed unusually strong sexual natures, and they had learned consciously or unconsciously to transmute the powerful energy into creative channels other than purely physical expression. Sex energy is life force at its most intense. When it dissipates without direction, masturbation, it leaves the individual depleted, right? Because you've spent all of your cerebral, your energy, your creative juice, like literally, that's the coding of genetic reality being spread without purpose. It's just naturally depleted. When it is conserved or redirected towards a definitive purpose, invention, art, leadership, the building of an enterprise. It supplies a driving power that few other sources can match. You are literally using the creative power of this universe, because where did we all come from? Right? Let's get to the basics here. And this process is not repression. Repression creates tension and eventually explosion. Transmutation is the conscious lifting of the energy into a higher form of expression. The same creative force that seeks physical union can be trained to seek union of ideas, the completion of a work, or the realization of a vision. Hill noted that the periods of greatest creative output in the lives of many achievers coincided with periods when this energy was deliberately channeled into their work rather than aimlessly scattered. We'll just call it that. Florence Scovel did not write extensively on this subject in the same terms, yet her teachings teaching on the conservation of the force and direction of the attention are consistent with what Hill was talking about. Whether attention and feeling are focused, whenever attention and feelings are focused, energy flows. The scattered attention in idle or destructive channels is to waste the very substance from which new conditions are formed, right? Notice where vital energy is leaking from you through worry, through excessive stimulation, through aimless activities. Then deliberately gather it and pour it into the defined purpose. Lee, you and I were just talking about this. Sometimes it's even other people that just drain your purpose energetically. And that is a huge distraction from the manifestation practice. And the results over time are unmistakable. And this actually brings me to a past episode that I did with Richard Allen Miller when he was talking about sex magic. And he explained the principle of when you are at the stage of climax, you can use the visualization practices and breathing techniques that are available in order to not only extend the experience of the climax, but it is also an amazing time to, if you can control your breath and yourself, it is a very, very heightened energetic projection time for visualization and creation during the point of orgasm. I will just flat out say it. And this is something I personally believe in as well. This next section is very important, and it's our old friend, the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is the connecting link between the finite and the infinite. It works continuously whether one is awake or asleep. It accepts the dominant thoughts and feelings impressed upon it and proceeds to translate them into their physical equivalent. Hill taught that the subconscious is particularly responsive to thoughts mixed with strong emotion. Fear, poverty consciousness, and doubt, when emotionally charged, produce their corresponding results, whereas faith, courage, and clear pictures of a definitive purpose, when emotionally charged, create theirs, right? This goes back to the my life sucks thing. You're going to create what you're thinking. The practical implication is simple and profound. Monitor the emotional tone of the thoughts that are allowed to become that you've allowed to become habitual. Feel the subconscious diet of positive, constructive, definitive ideas, and limit the intake of fear-producing suggestions from the environment that surrounds you, right? The subconscious does not distinguish between what is deliberately chosen and what is just merely allowed and you've just intaken. So whatever is given the emotional intensity becomes the working material. Shinn also emphasized the same truth through the discipline of the spoken word and the practice of gratitude. She advised ending the day with thanksgiving for each good that is already present and for the good that is on its way. And this has been a huge one for me. Gratitude impresses the subconscious with the feeling of fulfillment and thereby accelerates the arrival of further good. Now, quiet periods of reflection or meditation allow the conscious mind to become still so the deeper mind can receive clearer impressions from the infinite intelligence. In that stillness, ideas, warnings, intuitive leanings often arise, and the subconscious is always working. The question is whether it's working on the material one has deliberately given it, or the random material of undirected thought and basically running on autopilot. So this section, and that's where I'm going to close on the subconscious. This section is about the actual brain. Okay. So he'll describe the brain as both a broadcasting and receiving station for the vibration of thought. Every brain is capable of picking up vibrations of thought realized by other brains. When the mind is tuned through desire and faith to a particular frequency, the frequency of a definitive purpose, it becomes more receptive to the ideas and to the presence of other minds vibrating in harmony with that purpose and ideas. This is one of the mastermind. This is one reason the mastermind principle is so powerful. Minds in harmony amplify another signal. Okay. It is also the reason that a person who dwells continuously on a constructive aim begins to notice opportunities and information that had previously escaped them. The brain has become tuned. And basically that's what you're trying to do, is tune yourself to the aligning frequency. Hill believed that thought itself is a form of energy, and that when it is focused and emotionalized, it radiates outward and attracts corresponding vibrations from the surrounding mental atmosphere. As well, Shinn spoke of intuition as the voice of the infinite speaking through the individual. The brain, when quieted of personal opinion and fear, becomes a clearer instrument for that voice. Inspiration is not rare, it's a natural functioning of the mind that has been prepared by a definitive purpose and emotionalized faith. Send out clear, emotionally charged intentions and remain open to the return of current ideas, intuitions, and unexpected assistance. The brain is far more than a calculating machine. It is a station in a vast network of intelligence. And this brings us to the sixth sense. The sixth sense is the apex of this entire philosophy. Hill called it the creative faculty, the point of contact where the point of contact with infinite intelligence. It is the faculty through which hunches, sudden insights, and the sense of knowing or gnosis arrive without the ordinary process of reasoning. The faculty does not develop in isolation. It emerges as the natural result of consistent practice of these other principles. When desire is definite, when faith is cultivated, when autosuggestion is practiced, when knowledge is specialized, imagination is used constructively, and plans are organized, decisions are prompt, persistence is maintained, the mastermind principle has been employed, energy is conserved and directed, the subconscious is fed positively, and the brain is tuned, then the sixth sense begins to function with increased reliability. It brings the feeling of being guided, opportunities that appear that could not have been planned. The right word is spoken at the right moment. The individual moves with a sense of flow rather than struggle. Shinn described this state is being in tune with the infinite. She taught that when one has done all that can be done in order in the outer and has realized the outcome in faith, the higher intelligence takes over and works in a way that the infinite mind cannot foresee. The sixth sense is not a mystical exception to the laws of the mind. It is the flowering of those laws when they are faithfully applied. Hill revealed that the life we desire is shaped first in the mind, where Shinn showed that the spoken word charged with faith is the instrument by which that mental shape is impressed upon the invisible substance of life, right? So, with all this being said, what I would like you to do today is choose one principle and lean into it with quiet consistency. And I would suggest listening to or reading the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, as well as The Game of Life and How to Play It. These are both huge factors in this understanding, and form supportive connections with those who understand the creative power of thought. Persist with quiet faith, and whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. So master your inner world and watch your outer reality transform. And that was my very long-winded explanation of mastering the mind for manifestation. I hope if you guys enjoyed this, you get something from it. Like I said, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. And like I always say, if you can, please do go outside, because it's a lot better than sitting in front of the screen. And I love you guys.